I never believed in ghosts or curses until the night I got stuck on the old dirt road outside town. The one no one talks about. The road people call the Hollow. It's just a 2-lane stretch surrounded by dense woods and fields, empty except for the occasional abandoned car or rusted sign. I was driving home from a friend's place late, the kind of night where the sky is so black it feels like a void swallowing the world whole. My phone was dead, of course, because I forgot to charge it, and I had no idea how far I was from the nearest gas station. The car sputtered and died right in the middle of the road. No warning, just silence and then nothing. I tried turning it over a few times, but it wouldn't start. No signal, no help, just the dark and the cold creeping in. I grabbed my flashlight and decided to walk. I figured if I followed the road, I'd reach some kind of town or house. It didn't take long before I saw something. A figure standing just off the shoulder, barely visible in the beam of my flashlight. I called out, but the figure didn't move or respond. As I got closer, the beam caught its face, or what should have been a face. It was pale, almost translucent, with eyes that were too wide and black to be human. It wore old, tattered clothes like it had stepped out of a picture from decades ago. I froze. The figure tilted its head slowly, unnaturally, and then vanished. Just like that, as if swallowed by the night itself. I ran back to my car, but it still wouldn't start. My heart pounded in my chest, and the hair on the back of my neck stood up. I wasn't alone out there. Something was watching me. Then the whispering started, soft, urgent, coming from the woods on either side of the road. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was desperate, almost pleading. I shone my flashlight into the trees, but all I saw were shadows. I kept walking faster now, hoping to get out of that place. The road curved sharply, and I nearly stumbled over something lying in the dirt. It was a pair of shoes, muddy and worn, like they'd been left behind in a hurry. I looked up and saw more shoes, hundreds of them, lining the edge of the road, stretching into the distance. Each pair was different, some small, some large, all abandoned. I wanted to turn back, but the path behind me had disappeared. The woods had closed in, blocking any chance of escape. That's when I saw them. Figures emerging from the trees, slowly at first, then faster. Not quite human, their movements jerky and unnatural. Faces pale and twisted in silent screams. They didn't speak, but their eyes locked onto me with a hunger that froze my blood. I ran into the woods, heart hammering, branches slapping my face and arms. I could hear them behind me, footsteps, whispers, the rustling of dead leaves. I tripped and fell, scraping my knees on the rough ground. When I looked up, the figures surrounded me. They reached out with cold hands, their touch like ice, pulling me toward a clearing I hadn't seen before. In the center stood a circle of stones, ancient and worn. At its heart was a hole in the earth, like a door waiting to be opened. The whispers grew louder, forming words I could barely understand. Join us, stay forever. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. The cold hands pulled harder. Then just as suddenly as it started, everything stopped. I woke up on the side of the road, the first rays of dawn breaking through the trees. My car was running, the engine humming smoothly. The shoes and figures were gone. I never told anyone what happened that night. Some nights, though, when the wind blows just right, I swear I hear whispering outside my window, and I wonder if the Hollow will ever let me go. It was supposed to be a simple weekend trip, a chance to get away from the city noise and stress. I wanted to visit the old farmhouse my grandfather left me, located somewhere deep in the countryside. I'd never been before, and the directions he left were vague, only saying follow the forgotten road. The weather was cloudy but calm as I drove down the winding country lanes. The GPS was useless out here, no signal for miles. Eventually, the paved roads gave way to gravel and dirt, and the trees on either side seemed to close in like a tunnel. After about an hour of driving, I found it. A narrow dirt path lined by gnarled ancient trees. The locals called it the Forgotten Road for good reason. It was barely wide enough for one car, and it looked like no one had maintained it in decades. The sun was dipping low behind the hills, casting long shadows across the ground. I should have turned back, but something kept me moving forward. The farther I drove, the heavier the silence became. No birds, no insects, just an oppressive stillness. The forest on either side seemed alive, watching. I kept glancing at the rearview mirror, half expecting to see someone following. But the road was empty. I reached the farmhouse just as the last light vanished. It was a crumbling two-story building surrounded by dead grass and broken fences. The air smelled of damp earth and decay. Inside, the place was cold and dusty. Cobwebs filled the corners, and old furniture lay covered in sheets. I set up my things, lit a fire in the ancient stone hearth, and tried to shake the growing feeling of unease. That night, I woke up to the sound of footsteps outside, slow, deliberate, pacing back and forth in the gravel. I froze, listening. The footsteps stopped near the porch, then silence. I checked the locks, but everything was secure. I told myself it was an animal, maybe a stray dog. But then I heard whispering, soft, almost like a prayer. The voice was too faint to make out words, but cold and desperate. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped outside. The night was pitch black, but the beam of the flashlight cut through the gloom. I scanned the yard. Nothing. Then I saw it. Footprints. Bare footprints leading from the road to the porch, but they didn't belong to me. They were small, child-sized, but deep and heavy, as if the feet had sunk into the earth. I followed the trail into the woods. The forest swallowed the light, but I pressed on. The whispering grew louder, closer. I could feel something watching me, a cold breath on my neck. I came to a clearing. At the center stood a twisted tree, blackened and dead, its branches like claws reaching skyward. Beneath it lay a small, broken doll, half buried in the dirt. Suddenly a voice behind me whispered my name. I spun around. No one. I ran back to the house, heart pounding. The whispering followed me, overlapping and urgent, filling my ears. That night I barely slept. Shadows moved in the corners of the room. The fire flickered unnaturally. Over the next few days, strange things happened. Doors creaked open by themselves. Cold spots appeared in every room. At night, I heard scratching on the walls, like nails trying to claw through. The locals I managed to call warned me to leave. They spoke of an old tragedy, a family that lived in the farmhouse long ago whose children vanished without a trace. They said the forgotten road wasn't just a path. It was a boundary. Crossing it invited something in. One night, the whispering turned into crying. Desperate, heart-wrenching sobs. I followed the sound to the basement door, which I'd avoided before. It was unlocked. Inside, the air was thick and stale. The walls were covered in strange symbols carved deep into the wood. At the far end, a small wooden box lay open. Inside, I found a set of tiny clothes, stained and torn. I heard a soft giggle. I turned, but the basement was empty. The door slammed shut. I was trapped. The next morning, my phone had signal again. I called for help, but the line was filled with static and low whispers. No one believed me when I told them what happened. When they came to check the house, all they found was an empty basement, a broken doll, and the faint scent of wet earth. I never returned. But sometimes, late at night, I still hear footsteps on the gravel outside my window, and a soft voice calling my name from the forgotten road. I used to love driving out to the countryside to clear my head, especially late at night when the roads were empty and the stars felt close enough to touch. It was a kind of freedom. No city lights, no noise, just me and the open dark. Until that one night changed everything. I was taking a route I hadn't traveled before, a narrow dirt road winding through thick woods and open fields. The locals called it Ronnie Road, but no one seemed to talk much about it, like it was best left forgotten. The sky was cloudy, thick enough to block out the moon. The only light came from my headlights, cutting a narrow path ahead. I'd been driving maybe 20 minutes when the car started acting up, sputtering, stalling. I pulled over, heart sinking, no cell signal. I popped the hood, but the engine was cold, like it had shut off hours ago. I tried the ignition again. Nothing. I was alone. I stepped out and the night was silent, too silent. Even the usual sounds of crickets or frogs were gone. The air felt heavy, like I was underwater. I looked down the road and saw something I wish I hadn't. A figure standing at the edge of the trees, motionless. It was tall, with long arms hanging low, wearing ragged clothes soaked in mud. Its face was pale, with eyes that glowed faintly like embers. I froze. It didn't move, didn't blink, it just watched. I slammed the door and locked it. The car wouldn't start, but at least I was inside. Minutes passed. Then I heard something. The sound of footsteps on gravel, slow and deliberate, circling the car. I shone my flashlight out the window, but saw nothing. The footsteps stopped. Then came a knock, soft tapping on the driver's side door. I didn't open it. The tapping turned to pounding. I locked the doors tighter, grabbed the keys, and tried the engine again. This time it caught. The lights flickered on and the radio crackled to life with static. I peeled out of there, tires kicking up dirt. As I drove, the pounding on the door continued, but now it was inside the car. I looked in the rearview mirror. The back seat was empty. I kept driving. The road stretched ahead, twisting into blackness. The figure was nowhere to be seen. But sometimes late at night when I'm alone, I still hear tapping on my window, and I swear those glowing eyes are watching me from just beyond the trees.